Yesterday, a left-wing creep opened fire on GOP lawmakers practicing for tonight's game.
Do we know where he's at? Do we know where he's at?
He's behind home plate. You call 911?
I assume people have been calling 911 already.
Now, despite the attack, the lawmakers took the field tonight at National Stadium in D.C. More on that, as well as an update on Congressman Scalise later. So since the shooting, we've seen a lot of finger-pointing. After preaching unity, Nancy Pants blames the Republicans.
Coarsen political behavior. Do you see this as equally afflicting the left and the right? And
no, I do not. Somewhere in the 90s, Republicans decided on a politics of personal destruction as they went after the Clintons, and that is the provenance of it, and that's what has continued.
Sorry, lady. The politics of destruction started way before that, and it's back for one reason: the attacks on discourse. If you shut down discourse, then there's no stopgap between rage and violence. Discourse keeps us from killing each other. So knowing this, let's ask these questions. Are conservatives the ones shouting people down on campus? Are conservatives blockading offices and physically attacking speakers? Are conservatives rioting after elections? Are conservatives harassing professors for calling out racism? Are conservatives stabbing police horses? Are they throwing urine on young women? This attack on discourse isn't a right-wing thing, it's a left-wing thing, who perfected it for decades, seeking to subvert the West. I don't know one righty who wears a Che shirt, but I remember Bill Ayers. He set off bombs. Whose side is he on again? It's the same side targeting dissent with violence now. Their premise is simple. If they think you're evil, not just wrong, then there can be no dialogue and only violence. So there's the rub. If a person agrees with you that it's time for calmness, then they aren't the problem. It's the people who embrace violence who are. I'd ask them to stop right now, but I don't think they watch The Five. Juan, Nancy said it all started with the Clintons. Do you think that's accurate? I mean, don't you think the 70s, it started before that with the Vietnam War and demonizing? Before. Yeah, even, I would say, my theory is it started with Nixon and blaming him for the Vietnam War and calling soldiers baby killers. I think that's where it came.
No. I think in this modern era, our politics really have roots in that Clinton impeachment and the very personal kind of attacks that came forward during that period. And then I would go forward, Greg, from there to the 2000 election and the kind of acrimony and accusations about cheating in the election and the Supreme Court decision. And then we had a moment of unity around 9/11, but then you go to 2004 and the Swift boating charges against John Kerry and the charges of blood for money against President Bush. It got so personal, so heated. So I think she's right about that. But I just think it's also important to say that Pelosi didn't invite this conversation. She said we shouldn't be having this conversation today. She wanted to celebrate the idea that we are family, that the Congress people across political lines are playing in the game.
You know, Jesse, I remember the Bork hearings. I'm that old. I remember how Ronald Reagan was portrayed as Hitler.
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, but I mean, this stuff has been, the radical left is always trafficked in violence because they romanticize it as part of a revolutionary ideology. So it's natural, I would think, that it comes from there.
Yeah, you made that great point last night. This is just in their bloodstream. It's what they do. To Juan's point about the personal destruction of the 90s, I think it was Bill Clinton who destroyed his own presidency by making a dumb personal decision. So let's just make sure we have that clear. Nancy Pelosi is politicizing an assassination attempt against her own colleague. She didn't even wait 24 hours. The guy is still in the hospital. She's pointing fingers at Republicans after a Democrat pointed a gun at Republicans and squeezed the trigger. I think right now what you're seeing is the media and the Democrats have almost accepted death and violence in the political discourse. And when celebrities go out there and they talk about killing and assassination and blowing up the White House, no one in the media draws the line for them. They don't say stop, so they don't know where the line is. And, you know, you didn't have 1,000 newspaper reporters, 1,000 TV personalities, 5 networks, and all this mainstream media constantly trying to destroy President Obama and trying to impeach President Obama. You didn't have that. And right now you just have an avalanche of negativity. You don't have Republican politicians going out there and saying that, you know, President Obama kills people and is a killer. You have that right now against President Trump. So I think one of the real reasons the left is so bloodthirsty is because Trump threatens their existence. If he succeeds and America First succeeds, their credibility and their coalitions, they're done. So this is life and death for the left. And I think the more Trump does succeed, I think the more violent it's going to get. You know, Kimberly, Jesse brings up what the right is always being accused of. And I can't blame people for not liking the right, because we're being told that they've rolled back civil rights. Yeah. They're secret white supremacists. Don't forget women. They're sexist. They're guilty of treason. They sentence people to death if they ever try to change Medicaid. And the Paris Accords, that's going to cause mass extinction. So if you read what the Democrats or the left say about us, I would hate us too.
Yeah, it's like as a DA, and we have the charging sheet, like they've thrown the book at it. Anything else we can blame them on, where we're careless, reckless with climate, everything. So basically all evils or things that are wrong in the world, they point and say, okay, it's the Republicans. But you have to think, when you think back about the time about Democrats and all the names that they have called, that he was conservative or Republican, or people that voted, you know, for President Trump, that you're racist, that you're sexist, you're this, anything that they can think of, they have said. But how do the Democrats explain all the middle class and working men and women that came out and voted for President Trump? Are all of those people bad too? I think they forget, because they're in this sort of like very vocal minority bubble of extremist language and alt-left, that they might be actually offending a large number of hardworking, voting Americans out there who aren't out there spewing stuff, but they're listening and hearing what's been going on. And then you see this, and then the poor taste and judgment to not cancel the play in Central Park, the assassination, with what happened with the attempted assassination of Congressman Scalise and the others there. It's just, you know, how did it get this bad? Yeah. You know, Dana, what I was trying to get at is, like, when whether it's Pelosi talking to a Republican about lowering the tenor of the discourse, those aren't the people you need to reach. I fear that it's the people that you want to reach. You lost them. Nobody in Antifa is going to listen to any of us.
That's what I was actually, Jesse and I were talking in the green room before the show, and I was saying something that all of these conversations about softening the rhetoric, we're like having amongst ourselves, and we basically, none of us are about to go out and shoot somebody because of their views might be opposing to ours. On the Ben Shapiro show today, he was talking about the roots of this actually go all the way back with the left demonizing the right during the JFK assassination. And basically, if you look at what happened then from the media standpoint, once talk radio sort of comes into play and Fox News is successful, you saw the left get really resentful that there were successful media outlets that were providing this counterweight to what had been out there for so long and never been challenged. Now with social media, you actually are taking a lot of the networks and the newspapers out of the equation. Most people get their news online, and a lot of this, I think, is one thing that's very sad, and we haven't had a lot of reporting about this yet, but a lot of these people like Hodgkinson, the shooter, when he's on those websites that are, want to destroy the Republican Party or whatever that was, that he was part of a Facebook group, a lot of that content is fueled by fake news, so like actual fake news coming from Russia, Macedonia, people that are actually like wholesale making up stories and trying to stoke anger and trying to figure out a way that they can actually make money because of the clicks. So there's a whole different sort of media thing that is happening that wasn't there 60 years ago, but that is building and now is like basically throwing fuel on the fire.
Juan, can I ask you, I just read today about the Golden State Warriors not going to the White House. In terms of discourse, couldn't they go and talk to the guy and say, here's why we're mad at you? I sometimes fear that people avoid that because what if they're wrong, or what if they find out he's not so bad?
Right.
No, I think people have a legitimate right to say, I don't like your politics, I don't like your fear-mongering, I don't like your appeal to anger.
They go and say it.
You don't have to go and say it. I think by their absence, it's being said very loudly.
Or is that?
I mean, you know, you look at. By the way, when I listen to this, I think to myself, I just look at daily politics, and I see tens of millions of dollars being spent down in Georgia to demonize Nancy Pelosi. She has become, you know, what's the opposite of a whipping boy, a whipping girl? She's become a piñata for the right. And I just think, well, what's the basis of this? But you know what? It doesn't matter anymore because in the mind of the right wing, she is bad, and they find that they can raise money, generate votes, and anger.
You're talking about the special election in Georgia?
Yeah.
But the Democrats have spent just as much money, if not more, and they're actually their polling shows that he's in stronger position to beat Karen Handel on Tuesday. There's a long way to go. Maybe that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But they basically have spent all of their money demonizing President Trump.
Well, no, they go after Trump on the basis of his policies. I'm saying...
Well, what about her policies?
Well, that's not what they do, Kimberly. They go after her in terms of she is the leader and she is this bad... She's a witch. It's like they're having a...
Can I say one thing about Pelosi, though? Pelosi was given the opportunity when she was asked that question, you know, which side is going to take any responsibility for some of this violence? And instead of saying, she could have said, you know, the left sometimes gets out of control and we need to talk to them and make sure that they don't do that. Or she could have said even, you know, it's both sides. Both sides are wrong. We contributed. No. She pointed the finger at Republicans a day after a Republican was shot by a hardcore Democrat activist.
In response, she said, this is not the day for this conversation.
She answered the question and had the conversation.
No, because she answered a question she was pushed on. But to my mind,
she doesn't have to answer like that.
The question is, if you live in an age where you see immigrants demonized, where you see Black Lives Matter called out as evil and terrible and anti-police, and then there's someone you say, well, who's saying these things? Why is it that there's violence coming from the at the Trump rallies, and the president, the man-elected president, says, I'll pay your legal bills? Ted Nugent insulting the president, talking about, oh, you know...
Some of these illegal immigrants are crossing the border illegally and then committing crimes.
Let me just say,
and stealing jobs. And some of the Black Lives Matter people are chanting about killing cops.
Well,
There's a lot of stuff to go around,
Jesse.
Juan.
President Obama's not a monkey. How about that?
What does that have to do with anything?
Oh, because of the images that came from the far right, from Ted Nugent, Carl Palladino. I could go on, but I'm not doing it.
Don't point to a random son of the Tea Party, Juan. I'm talking about elected officials and the people in the media.
The interesting thing is, Juan, you're suggesting that what Trump says or does incites violence, but the problem is it's inciting violence from the other side. So think about that.
The guy who got punched in the face at the Trump rally?
That was one thing. You can find one exception proves the rule.
I see.